Hi, good afternoon, and thanks for joining us today. I'm Amanda Hartwick, the Special Projects Coordinator for the city, and alongside me, I've got Katie Barron, our city engineer. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Snider Plaza. Before we get started, I just want to go through a couple of housekeeping items. First, we're recording this session, so if you have to log off early, or if you have a neighbor that wasn't able to join us, we'll have the video available on our website tomorrow. And then the next thing, Katie, if you can go that next screen for me.
Yep.
We'll take some questions at the end, and there's a couple ways to participate. You can do so using the chat feature. If you send us a chat, it will come to me, and then I'll field that question at the end of the presentation. Or you can engage us directly if you want to unmute to ask your question at the end. Just raise your hand and we'll unmute you and you can ask your question that way. The other thing I want to make note of is Katie's email address is there on the screen. So if you have follow-up questions that come up, take note of her email and you can contact her that way. With that, I'm going to log off until the end and I'll rejoin you, Katie, once we've got some questions.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Welcome everyone to our surface improvements public meeting. I know that several of you have seen me over the last couple of months with various projects and updates and things happening in Snider Plaza, so I appreciate you joining us today. Today I'm going to be talking about our surface improvements project and not the utility project currently under construction, so just keep that in mind. So as Amanda said, I'm gonna field questions at the end, but feel free to add them to the chat as you think of them, but we will take them all at the end. So again, what we've been talking about Snider Plaza for the last couple of years or so and kind of in planning mode. We came to you as a group last spring with Catalyst Group and Space Between Design to kind of bring some concepts forward for some public input. That kind of led us through to this piece, which we lovingly call our cake strategy, but it is primarily a series of kind of how we're going to phase this piece together. And today I'm going to be specifically talking about the paving and the phase 1 landscaping improvements. You'll see the utilities down there kind of at where we are with this project and kind of repair and restoration. All of the things that we'd like to do are all on this piece, but there's kind of levels of importance in how what we can do now versus what we can add later as we kind of get forward with what the plaza is going to look like. So as I said, the utility project's under construction right now. I'm not going to talk about that today specifically, but I will be talking about the paving and landscape design as that we have under design right now. So this is the proposed conceptual design. This was actually approved by council last summer. We took all of your public input and we kind of, the Space Between Design and Catalyst Group came up with this overall kind of plan for the district. And this goes all the way over to Dickens, all the way down to Hillcrest, Lovers to Daniel. With this, staff moved forward to get a contract for taking this conceptual design to get full construction documents, and for that we need an engineering firm. And we engaged consulting engineering firm Teagnell & Perkins. Council approved their contract last fall to take this lovely picture and bring it into construction documents. So what we're going to basically talk about today is kind of how that's going to work. So the part of this is we take this conceptual design and we move it through schematic design, which is where we're at now, and through to kind of construction documents. So the schematic design is based on the concept that you all helped us pull together and that was approved by council last summer. Teagnell & Perkins began that kind of schematic design effort around this plan, the hardscape and landscape plans, and developed various scenarios to move forward with that for staff to kind of discuss. These were presented to staff in April so we could kind of make specific design decisions, some of the challenges that they came up with, some of the decisions that needed to be made as we kind of move forward into getting this something that we can build. And the goal of these decisions is to provide an engineering solution to these planning and landscape plans to make that be a reality. This is an overall kind of concept plan for that phase 1 landscape and hardscape. So this was actually developed by Space Between Design, our landscape consultant, based on the feedback that we got from you. Each one of these little pieces is, you can see trees here. Let me get my laser pointer out here. So you can see trees. We have special pavers at the intersections here. We have the Fountain Plaza with a new fountain. We have Snider Common, Rosedale Green. There's benches, there's sidewalk pavers. There's all kinds of things that are part of this landscape and hardscape plan. And with this, we gave that plan to Tignall and Perkins, and they are pulling forward this plan for us to be able to move forward with construction documents. So this is more what engineering plans look like. You'll notice there's not pavers on there, but that's just because they're not overlaid yet. So this plan and this plan will both be incorporated into the same set of drawings. So I just want to be clear about that. But from a schematic design perspective, this is what we typically get. It's a long roll plot. I know it's hard for you to read, and I'm going to delve down into each individual block as we move forward. But this is what they present to us for schematic design. Council has seen this. We've moved forward with kind of how specific problems that we needed to kind of overcome and what some of those were. We discussed some of those with staff and then with council, and now we're bringing this to you. So just keep in mind, I'm going to talk about some of the landscape and hardscape improvements, and then I'm going to talk about how we make those happen from an engineering perspective. So I'm going to start on the south end at Daniel, and we'll move up towards Lovers. It's we're going to move downhill, Daniel being the highest end. But so the Daniel to Rosedale intersection or section of Snider Plaza, we have pavers at Daniel and Snider Plaza. Again, this is the landscape and hardscape plan that Space Between Design presented to us. There's pavers to delineate the sidewalks here. The Rosedale Green, which is just some additional park space and green space within the city right of way that we would like to see happen and make happen with this project. Snider Common, that is additional green space that can be used for multiple different things within the right of way. We have sidewalk pavers, we have bike racks and benches, additional trees throughout the project, and additional landscaping. So anytime you see some green space, it's not necessarily grass, it's not necessarily trees, but it is some planned green space that we're incorporating into the design. We also have street lights, street and pedestrian lighting. So street lights overhead, lights for traffic purposes, pedestrian lights that are smaller and like our standard city light that you see kind of all over town. So this is the same block from that schematic design that we received from Tignall and Perkins. So a couple of things to highlight here from an engineering perspective. We have curb bump outs right through here. So we've brought the curb line out at the intersections to be able to keep this travel lane the same, and that's on both sides, and it's all the way down. There's curb bump outs. It lets us pull the pedestrian crossings closer, so they're not having to travel so far, so you don't have to stand on the curb way back here and try to see where you're going to cross. It lets us do some additional things for grading at the curb bump outs to kind of enhance the drainage, lets us use a little bit different section. It also allows for this wonderful green space for us to be able to have additional plantings, trees, additional benches. It just provides additional space for us that we aren't currently using. And you'll see this throughout the project as well. So I mentioned this will still have pavers. It's not just going to be plain concrete, but at this stage, the engineer, that's for the landscape architect to work through with that. So the next time you see this, they will be there. But from a schematic design perspective, we did not add those to these plans. The curb bump outs also provide better flow through the plaza. The cars kind of know where they're supposed to go, and the pedestrians do too. We've also included some mountable curb here at Daniel, which is just for emergency vehicles to be able to make that corner. While we're still providing this U-turn access, this is a really great amenity. It helps traffic flow very well. So we wanted to keep that. Additionally, throughout this project, we have continuous accessible sidewalk throughout that is ADA compatible. In addition, we have ADA parking spaces, and we've incorporated full-size parking spaces per our city code. For our next block, Rosedale to Milton, you'll see some repeating patterns here, but I do want to go over each one so when we get to your block, you kind of know what's happening with that. So at Fountain Plaza, we have pavers with the new fountain, the Rosedale Green and Snider Common, like I mentioned before, pavers at the corners, pavers to delineate the crosswalks through here, around, kind of around here like this, and you can see them right here as well in blue. Benches and bike racks throughout the plaza, trees and landscaping, and additional street and pedestrian lighting, so that we are keeping the same kind of feel all the way up the blocks. And from a schematic perspective, what we think about from an engineering and how to get that working. So we have an enhanced intersection around Fountain Plaza for pedestrian traffic flow. So the circle is really, this is most likely going to be special pavers to kind of really enhance this circle movement. The curb bump outs allow the pedestrians to move across. They don't have to as far to cross. They can see where the traffic's coming and traffic can see them. That also allows us to do some additional grading things for drainage, especially along Milton, the accessible sidewalk and how that there's such a steep slope right through here. We'll be correcting that as we move forward through design. We're also providing code required full-size parking spaces and ADA parking spaces, as well as tree wells and planting areas all the way up. Those and kind of how those interact with the pavement and the existing trees and those kinds of things is what we'll work through in this next phase of the design. From Milton to Rankin, you'll notice that the Fountain Plaza and the special pavers in the intersections at Rankin and Snider Plaza. We'll have special pavers to delineate the sidewalks here as well, and lots of really cool pavers at the curb bump outs at the corners. Bike racks and benches, trees and landscaping. The lighting continues at kind of in alternating patterns with the trees you'll see right here. And from a engineering perspective, that being able to apply that, we have an adjusted curb transition for traffic flow right here. So the change between this section that is one way in each direction to a two-way section is a challenging thing for cars, and so we've made this kind of nose down just a little bit, where it's not as big a sudden transition for cars to move over this way, while we're still providing these bump outs for the cars on both sides. It allows for pedestrians to also cross a little bit easier as well. The grading through here is also an issue that we'll be able to correct and help out with drainage and drainage problems as well. Continuous accessible sidewalk, and this is all on Snider, but also on the cross streets as well. That is an ADA requirement that we provide an accessible route, essentially. So we'll be adding that into this project. We also will have full-size spaces and ADA spaces. The number of handicap spaces, and I will mention this here, that the number of spaces is not really negotiable, but the location is. So these are just representative. That's not necessarily where they're going to be right now. But the number will be the same, but there are specific requirements for those spaces, specific requirements for the location of those spaces as it relates to where other doors are, how far one route from a handicap space to another business is, those kinds of things. So the design team is working through that right now. So they may be adjusted here or there a little bit depending on that. They haven't gotten into that part of the design yet. From Rankin to Westminster, we have pavers that match basically the Westminster that match the Rankin intersection, same kind of intersection treatments, pavers to delineate the sidewalks, and these lovely sidewalk pavers that I think are going to look really cool with all this at the corners and really help define the space, provide additional green space. We have benches and bike racks, trees and landscaping, and street and pedestrian lighting in this section as well, even though this is the narrower section where it's two-way traffic instead of the one-way traffic. The enhanced pavers, the enhanced intersection around Westminster includes those curb bump outs, so that provides a better way for traffic to kind of get through there, as well as for pedestrian access. The nice wide sidewalks through here on both sides, as we pulled some of the parking out a little bit so we can increase the sidewalk width through here. The grading will, grading's not as big of an issue right through here as far as from a drainage perspective, but it will be it will be enhanced to match the others. I mean, we're putting in new pavement. We want to make everything better, right? So that's one of the main bonuses of this, as well as some continuous accessible sidewalk and parallel parking on Rankin that is not there now. So we'll be providing that as well as the ADA parking spaces. And these two blocks have head-in parking that's 90 degrees instead of the 45, where we've maintained that sequence and configuration. It works just fine. So from Westminster to Lovers, kind of wrapping up the end of the project, which depending on which end you come through, this is their entrance to Snider Plaza. And so we have this lovely intersection treatment with pavers, and kind of as you're entering the plaza, and kind of that this is where you're coming into this district. This is the location where we would add some monuments for Snider Plaza. We likely have some down at Daniel as well, but those locations aren't necessarily determined, but we do have the right of way here, so that's kind of why we're shooting for this location. Some special pavers, like I said, at the crosswalks, and we've provided continuous sidewalk across here for at the gas station, just for pedestrian access, and to really kind of bring that into the rest of the district and add some green space. Some additional lighting, curb bump outs for around the parallel parking spaces, etc. And that curb bump out at the gas station ended up being a little bit wider because this is where the trucks come in and fuel. So and refuel, refuel. They bring the fuel to the gas station. So we needed to be able to provide this big truck turnaround. So it's a little bit wider than is shown on the previous schematic, but it is still sidewalk across here with some lovely green space. We also kept this little triangle island right here, that this really aids well with traffic movement and how we need the movement of cars to kind of take place, but we're still able to keep this pedestrian refuge for pedestrians that are coming up this way, kids that are going to school, and they walk right through here and they walk right down the street right through here. So this will all be updated as well. The grading is not, like I said, it's not as big of an issue, but we will need to regrade this section. We're going to be providing curb bump outs right here for the parallel parking that's in front of Tom Thumb, and adding some ADA spaces on the other side. So that's pretty much the plan in a nutshell. That's where we are right now. So I just kind of wanted to wrap up with this is what we tasked what we heard from you and what we tasked the consultants with to begin our engineering and construction documents so we can get this built and take our lovely landscape plan and turn it into construction plans. And this is kind of one more shot of kind of the overall layout. It's a very intricate project. There are lots of puzzle pieces that have to fit together to make all of this stuff work. I know that sounds like a no-brainer to a lot of people, but there are, if you adjust the grading on one side, then it has an immediate effect on the next piece, and kind of getting all those pieces to fit together is a challenge to be able to provide parking and have landscaping and have sidewalks and have all the things. So the staff is very pleased with this effort so far, and that we've been able to bring this forward from a kind of just big pie in the sky concept plan to what this will actually look like when it's built. So kind of a couple of the next steps, and then I'll wrap it up and take your questions. All of these schematic design pieces need to be worked through for constructability. I don't know yet how we're going to build this. So if that's your question, I don't know yet. But what we're taking this to 60% design. And it's kind of what that means is we start getting into the hard grading, which is really fine tuning where your building entrance is, where the street is going to end, where, like, all of those little integrating pieces. It gets into the drainage design as well, and our geometric design that is really looking at it not just from a plan view, but also a vertical view and profile and in cross section and what that all looks like. They've done some of that already, but we're really getting into the nitty gritty of what that looks like. Those plans will be ready this fall, and we will come back to you again at that stage with an additional public meeting to kind of here's what this is going to look like. Here's what we figured out we weren't going to be able to make happen. This is what, well, we did figure it out. We will be able to make this happen. before we get into construction, and they'll take that through to pre-final plans in spring, and then final plans and bidding this hopefully next fall. We will not start construction on this project until the utility project is over. So depending on the schedule of that and the weather and where we kind of get to with that project, they will not overlap. So the construction start time for this project is still a little bit up in the air, but right now we won't start it until early 2023. So that's kind of where we're at in a nutshell, and I'm happy to take any and all of your questions.
Thanks, Katie. We did have a couple trickle in here. One of them, this first question is about timing when landscaping is happening in front of a particular business. As Katie just mentioned, it sounds like we don't have phasing for the project yet. So, okay. So
at this point, the landscaping will be part of this project when we start to build it. So that construction won't start for another 1.5 years, essentially. So nothing will happen in the plaza proper in front of your business until that time. And I'm hoping that we will have kind of a better idea of construction phasing and when that will happen at 60%. A lot of times until we kind of fine tune everything, it's not really possible until pre-final. It's usually like 90%, but we'll be able to answer those a little bit closer. But any landscaping won't happen until that construction project starts.
Okay, great. We actually just got 2 questions specifically about parking count. Do we know how many street level spaces are, what the parking count is for the entire plaza? That was one question. And then there was another question specifically for that Rosedale intersection. How many spaces might be lost there, and if those spaces are being made up elsewhere?
Okay. Hang on, I realized I was opening all in front of what y'all are looking at. So sorry about that.
Okay.
Amanda, ask that second question again. I'm sorry.
Okay, so it's 2 questions about parking. One is specific to the Rosedale intersection where that green, the Rosedale green is going in. How many spaces are being lost there, and if they're being made up elsewhere? And then the second question is really just overall, what's the parking, how does the parking kind of compare to what's out there today?
So there is a little bit of a decrease in parking. It's not too bad, considering most of the parking spaces are a little too small. So what we have total right now for this project from existing spaces is they've got it at 420-ish, and proposed that includes, so one of the biggest issues with this is accessible parking, which is there's very few. There's 15 existing spaces right now, and we need 25. And so those have to be taken up in a little bit different configuration, if you will. So we're decreasing the total number of parking spaces on this plan is about 380, but that includes additional accessible parking spaces. Regarding the parking spaces at Rosedale Green, those are some that are removed. They're not necessarily made up right there. However, I will remind the group that the lot that's currently being used as staging, we're hoping to take that forward for some sort of, that the city owns, some sort of parking lot. That's kind of still in the works a little bit, but to be able to provide some additional locations for parking in the plaza to help offset some of the reduction due to the redesign.
Great, thanks, Katie. Those are the only questions we've got so far. Hopefully that answered your question specifically about parking.
I'll back up to this last slide, so maybe I can jog everyone's memory if they have some specific questions.
Sure. Yeah, maybe we'll just give it a couple more minutes.
That makes my job easy. So, but you can always email me at any time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I know this is a lot to take in kind of all at once, but it's taking this piece that you all have seen before, and kind of applying that in a little bit different manner, so you can kind of see what we'll be able to provide.
Okay, we did just get another question asking about if it's possible to build a garage on that Rankin lot that you mentioned, Katie.
I sincerely doubt it. We're not investigating that at this time for a variety of reasons. One of them being kind of space constraints with the lot and how we'd be able to move cars in and around there. That's not necessarily, the lot's just not as conducive to that type of parking arrangement as it's just not, it potentially is not a viable solution.
Okay, let's see if we've got anything else. We did get a comment just asking for a PDF of your presentation, Katie, so we can make that available after the presentation, right? Okay,
yes,
great. Let's see. Oh, Arthur, I'm seeing your hand raised. Give me just 1 second. I will unmute you. Okay, Arthur, you should be unmuted now if you want to ask us a question.
Can you hear me now? All right. My question was just the timeline from when we do start construction to finish the project. What's the estimate right now?
So from when we start construction to when it would be finished?
Yes.
I wish I had a really hard answer for that. I don't honestly know at this point. I would imagine at least a year, if not longer than that. A lot of our bigger projects like this tend to be 18 months to 2 years. But that is not all closing at once. So how we've kind of talked about building this is if we build it a block at a time. So then you might be immediately impacted for a block, like your block might be immediately impacted for several months, but then it moves to your neighbors. I realize that the plaza as a whole, that really impacts everyone, and I completely understand that. So we've also looked at, well, what if we build one side then the other? So there's a lot of kind of moving pieces with that, and that definitely affects the construction time frame, but it is definitely not something that we can turn around very quickly. Just the nature of the construction, it takes a long time to do these kinds of things, even with really good contractors that move at a pretty quick pace. So.
Okay, understand. And one more question was on Hershey, is there any plans to do any work on Hershey Street, the whole street?
No, sir, not at this time.
Just put the brick walkways or the paver walkways?
That is something that has been talked about for the full district. It's not something specific to this project. So my anticipated answer is that in a couple of years after this is done, that's what we'll be taking forward throughout the kind of Snider Plaza district. We've talked about that before. As we go through and do some sidewalk improvements, we do the various other things like that. That's still on the table, yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Because the road's taking a beating right now with the big 18-wheelers and the forklifts and front-end loaders and all that running around. Just curious. Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question. So questions, multiple questions.
Okay, and we just got a question, or excuse me, a hand raised from David. So David, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. I've unmuted you on my side. You might have to, it's showing you self-muted. So there you go.
Okay, I appreciate it. What I was curious about, I mean, knowing every parking space is absolutely precious here. Looking at our property, is there a way to get a detailed plan and just exactly the changes y'all are proposing for the Tom Thumb lot so I can see if we're losing any parking spaces?
For the lot at Tom Thumb?
Yes.
We're not touching anything on the lot. The only parking configuration changes there on the street parking right on Snider. let me go back to that slide real fast. Oh, wait, I missed it. Sorry, I went too far. So right here. So the parking that's there now, we've just shifted it out a little bit. There may be one less parking space, but I honestly, I'm not sure if those are even striped. It's basically just kind of on-street parking. So these would be striped. Am I answering your question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just concerned. It looked like there was maybe some green space encroaching into our site that might be deleting some existing parking. That's what I was concerned about.
No, that anything inside your right of way is, we're not touching any of that. So if there's green space that's there, I see where you're talking about right here. Hang on, right there.
Yep.
That will be adjusted as we get into design.
Okay. All right. I think that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the question.
Let me see if we've got any other questions right quick. All right, I don't see any hands raised right now. Let me go back to the chat. We did have a question about the parking reduction. Just expressing concern about the parking reduction when there's obviously some parking needs in the plaza right now. I think that's something that could be tackled as part of a long-term parking management strategy.
Yes. So that's also, I'm going to try to, so that the kind of cake piece that I showed at the very beginning, the parking management is up at the top. There are other things kind of working behind. Thank you for that reminder, Amanda. Working behind the scenes from a district perspective that we are, that's kind of in the works right now. That's not necessarily part of what we can provide right now with construction documents and bringing this project forward. So that's not something I can specifically speak to right now, but I would encourage, if you have some additional questions about that, reaching out to Amanda or myself. We can, if we don't have an answer, we can definitely get you to the right person, but it may be that's kind of in the answer might be that it's kind of in the works right now. There's nothing decided definitively, but that is an option that city manager and the council have been discussing as well. So.
And we did get another question. This is a great question asking about parking in the new garage over at Hilltop Plaza. And yes, that parking, there is an hour free to the public. So that is something, that's another option for those visiting the plaza. You can park there free for the first hour. So good question. I don't see any other questions right now. Yep, it looks like we're caught up on the chat. So if you've got a question, feel free to send it in or raise your hand if you want to be unmuted. A couple of comments just saying thank you, so that's nice. You're welcome. We're happy to be here and share this with you.
Yes, thank you all for attending. I know that this format is, Amanda and I've talked about it before, it's actually pretty great because we can take, it's not great that we don't get to see you in person and kind of have that face-to-face, but it's also, we can record this and have conversation kind of around it, and you hopefully can see a little bit better kind of angle of what all is happening with this, and we can email it to you later and those kinds of things. So thank you for attending tonight, all of you. We really appreciate the interest and the questions and the participation.
Yeah, well, we still don't have anything coming in, so I think it's fair that we can kind of wrap up here.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much.
I'm doing one last check with of the chat. Hold
on.
Okay. Yeah, no, we're good. We're good. Thank you guys so much. We'll make this available on our website just as soon as we're done.
Okay. Thank y'all so much. Have a good
Bye.
evening.